I grew from being an angry and isolated little kid who pretty much didn't like anything or was kind of always complaining and blaming others for whatever happened to him, to becoming much more confident and basically having the social skills to approach anybody. Yes, that was me right here, and to pretty much do whatever I wanted and build my own business and do all sorts of pretty adventurous things over the years that I cannot share publicly on YouTube, otherwise I would be probably banned, but some crazy stuff. The goal of this video is not to give you just the basic bullet points that Google will give you if you type NLP techniques for confidence. I would like to go deeper from experience, what worked, because many NLP techniques can be not useless but not really appropriate in certain contexts. Some of them are much more appropriate for growing your self-confidence or your feeling of being capable of achieving more, and some of them will be more suited for example, a therapy session when you have somebody dealing with some childhood trauma. From experience, I'm going to give you what worked the best on me and on clients for pure self-confidence. At first, it is important to understand that confidence is usually what happens once you have competence, once you have been going through many experiences. So trying to trigger a sense of confidence like that may not be the best way to frame it in your head, but at least when I tell you, or when anybody tells you, can you see a more confident version of yourself, it is always going to appeal to some resourceful idea in your head of what you can achieve that you can't achieve right now, or you don't really feel like you can. And there is always something in your head that can be unlocked, more courage, more boldness, more sense of I'm going to make that happen no matter what happens around me. There is always something hidden in your head that we can use, and the word confidence or self-confidence is a pretty good one to demystify, to underline, highlight all those things. Most of this video is going to be centered on different ways of using anchoring, but ways you have probably not seen in most books. Some techniques that I have developed myself, some techniques that I have seen in books, but I have changed them a little bit so that they can fit and they can be taught in a simple way, because some books are giving you like 10 pages to understand one thing. I think it's irrelevant. I think to teach people we need to shorten and reduce. So that is what you're going to get in this video. The first technique right here is what we could call the not me, not now, not anymore. It is basically triggering an anchor, building up an anchor for a massive reluctance. Something you would say hell no to. For example, if you're a parent yourself and I would ask you, how would you feel, or would you be okay if somebody was trying to take your kid and you will never see him again or her again? Most likely what the answer is inside your head is hell no, like something like repulsive, like no way somebody steals my child away from me. Those kind of responses, we want to anchor something strong like that you would never accept, even if you were gonna die. There's no way you could accept that. That's sort of emotional trigger. We want to anchor it. You can use this and traditional finger anchor or whatever you want. Maybe a song that makes you think about that sensation, that situation, whatever it is. The idea is that once we have this anchor built up, the hell no, or the not me, not now, not anymore, something you would strongly believe that is not applicable to you, or is not applicable to you by now, or is not applicable to you anymore. Something like this. We have this anchor strong, firmly built up, and we are going to use it on all the bad memories or past limitations you have. All the things you used to say, oh yeah, but in my life I have never been able to do X or Y, and oh, I'm just like that, I'm kind of low self-esteem. All those excuses you have, or oh, I am not a consistent person, or I can never focus my mind. Well, all those excuses, you are going to trigger the hell no, or like the not me, not now, not anymore anchor. Once you trigger that anchor, that strong, like repulsive reluctance anchor on all the excuses you used to have, it is really going to rewire your whole neurology so that you won't have all those excuses. And the biggest secret I have found about consistency is that it is all about how you handle the excuses lying in your head. If you can reframe all of them, there is nothing else preventing you from being consistent on the long term. no matter what is the goal you have. The second technique is going to be about planting a new inner voice, or reframing the inner voice you may have in your head, the negative inner talk, stuff like that. Basically, I have come across the concept of submodalities, probably like you, many times, and there are 1,000 ways of using submodalities. I think to me it is the most impressive aspect of NLP, or one of the most impressive, at least for personal change. There is one great way to change those inner voices, and the texture, the sound of a voice in your head is a submodality. It is the modality of one of your 5 senses. And when you can change the tone of the voice you use to talk to yourself, it is going to open up a lot of possibilities you didn't know you have. So one clever exercise is to write down all the things you say to criticize yourself, or all the reasons you have for not being able to achieve whatever, or people don't like me, people have never believed in me, my mom was abusive, my father was alcoholic, all those excuses or all those negative experiences, even if they did happen, but you don't need to keep using them to justify why you can't right now, because you yourself is a human being who can achieve whatever you want to create, whatever you can imagine, you can achieve it. However, many people, if not everybody, used to use other excuses or other scenarios that they use to justify why they can't today. Or they use one experience from their past to justify that, oh, it's never going to happen in the future anyway. When you can take those voices, those scripts, those sentences, those excuses, those phrases you say to yourself or you hear in the back of your head, you're just gonna say them, especially if it is something somebody else told you that really hurt you. You are going to write down all those phrases and tell them exactly as if you were a very confident person. Just think of the most confident person you can think of and use their voice. Exactly their voice tonality. I had made a small example in another video with Gary Vee, a famous entrepreneur who has built many successful companies and is always pretty motivational. You can use voices like his or anybody else. You can use those voices and say exactly the bad things you say to criticize yourself or to justify why you will fail, and you say those exact same words with the voice tonality, with the sound of the voice of that person, that utterly confident person. What it is going to do is that it is going to completely rewire all your sensations. When you change the tone of the voice, it rewires the feelings associated with that voice. Or it may open up something else. When you use that trick, you may open up, oh, actually the problem was this, and you were completely blind to it because your defense mechanisms have been hiding or putting into so much shame that one thing you were not really inclined to uncover, and this is going to open up those spots, and then you can reframe them the same way they have reframed this inner voice in the beginning. The third technique is to redefine the meaning of the words. Previously we have seen how to change the modality, the sound of the voice. Now we are going to attack the actual meaning of words you may use to talk to yourself, or the words you use to describe your goals or the limitations you have. Probably if you have a big goal, you have some limitations or some limiting beliefs that you may feel like are not limiting beliefs because you feel like they are reality. It's just people don't like me, or people will never want to let me build my business, or whatever it is. Yeah, other people can be related to it, but no matter what is happening around you, there is a way to change your situation, with some minor exceptions. Maybe if you are in a prison somewhere in a shady country, maybe it's not the case. But even then, there are counter-examples to this. So people have been escaping prison. So it is always possible to at least change your situation to something a little bit better. And the idea of redefining words, redefining the meaning of what's happening to you is of great use when you want to reframe your own limitations. Whatever the term, the concept is, there is always a good way to talk about it, a bad way to talk about it. Every debate, whether it is political, about religion, about sexuality, there's always a good way to talk about it, to present it, and a really bad way. A way to talk about the same concept and turn it into complete shit. And politicians are experts at that. They are masters. They will always take the version of reality that is the best suiting them or suiting their goals with the population, whatever they want to do. It's just that, like everybody else, you see the good side in life of what you like and the bad side of what you don't like. You always reframe. Everybody does that all day long. That's how our brain are learning faster. And I could talk about redefining and sleight of mouth for a while, but I played with this ChatGPT new tool and I just entered, can you find me a sleight of mouth pattern for I'm not confident, I'm low self-esteem? And this is giving you examples that may sound like or look like basic affirmations, but if you really, because I'm not confident is a pretty basic general term, but if you write your very specific, precise limitation or like the very specific negative feeling you have and you write, find me a sleight of mouth pattern from NLP to reframe or to challenge this limitation, ChatGPT will find you many examples of how you can better see the good side, the positive side of this. Obviously, your internal state is going to affect how true you think those statements are. So if you're in a really negative state, you may just say, oh, none of that is applicable to me. But if you are in a good state, you would be like, oh, actually, this one, yeah, I can feel like it could be true. So changing your state with the inner voice, with all of the tools described here or in any other NLP video, it is really the core of all of that. Changing your state first, and then you can change the meaning of what's happening to you. Technique number 4, this one is a pretty funny one. It is called the football field, or like walking toward a more confident version. The idea is that many people into NLP trainings have seen some sort of protocol like that, where you just walk on the ground like this, step by step, and you just advance, for example, with the logical levels of Robert Dilts, where you step onto the environment case, then on the behavior case, then on the capabilities, then on the identity, values, beliefs. There is another way of using that. It is to imagine that just in front of you is a more confident version of yourself. No matter what it means to you, it can be just about courage, it can be about relieving stress, whatever it is. Just a more confident version, a hologram of a more confident version of yourself just in front of you. And you imagine what it looks like, you notice if there are changes in the breathing, in the voice tonality, in the clothes maybe, whatever it is, the stance, and you then step into and breathe in and feel how it feels like to be there. This one may be not really that great because you could be like, oh yeah, but I'm depressed, I'm not really, my life is still shit, whatever. Yes, however, what you're going to do, or yes, and to the agreement frame, what you're going to do is keep envisioning that. From that point, you are going to keep seeing a new version, even more confident than where you are now. So if you started there and you were like feeling like kind of stuck in the situation, stuck in the moment, there's nothing really much I can do in my situation, people are criticizing me around me, all those negative things. What is the confident version who could handle all of that? Boom, you step into that, you notice how you feel. Same thing, you notice what is here, what is an even more confident version. Or if you don't want to use the word confidence, just use any resourceful state or any idea you have of what does it look like to be extremely resourceful, empowered, motivated, confident, courageous, whatever it is, bold. That's the one I like personally. You imagine that and same thing, boom, you step into it. And the football field exercise, it is called like that because you can do that on the whole football field. This exercise is one I learned from Eric von Sydow, and he used to do that on the whole football field. Imagine how your neurology can really envision more and more better states when you do that on a whole football field. It is exactly like this gratitude exercise. For example, when you want to write down 10 things you are grateful about every morning, and you do that for 30 days, what's going to happen is you are going to create a habit for always noticing what is good about your life right now. Because it is just forcing your brain to always look for what is more positive. When you do that thing, it is the same idea. You are going to create even new representations for what it looks like and feels like to be even more confident. And every step on the road, you may have new ideas. You may have, oh, actually, I never thought about this. What if I was doing this? What if I was doing that? Could I talk to this person? And new ideas are going to come when you do that for long enough. You may do that like once per morning, for example, once per day, or like once in only a year, but you do it on a whole highway, for example, and just you are going to build up more resources inside yourself. You are going to give more representations to your body, physiology, and mindset for what it looks like and feels like and sounds like to be more advanced in life. Technique number 5, healing past wounds or past hurt or anything that has been really draining and really hurting you from the past. There is this idea of anchoring on the ground we have seen in the previous one, where you step onto the next version of yourself. Another version of using that is to imagine that where you are right here, it is your negative state or the main state that is preventing you from reaching what you want. Whether you feel low self-esteem, or you feel lack of consistency, or you find excuses to say why you cannot lose weight, or whatever it is, you just step here and anchor on the ground like a hologram of that version of you who is saying all those bad things about yourself. You are going to dissociate. Imagine you leave the hologram just right here and see it from a distance. The idea of doing that, and it may go into cognitive therapy, stuff like that, is that you can interact. You are going to imagine you interact with that part of yourself. It's like a part of yourself who used to be limited, who has limitations, and you are going to have a discussion. Especially if you know a bit of NLP or hypnotherapy, you know how to conduct an interview with a client to really understand the problem and notice the black spots. If you do that on the first position, it may be really hard, unless you are already trained into doing self-hypnosis and going in trance yourself to ask your unconscious what's happening. If you can do that, then do it. That's what I do personally. Otherwise, in the beginning, when I didn't know how to do that yet, I was doing that physically, like pushing on the ground, like pulling away from that version of myself that was limited and talking with it, like asking what is it that you're trying to tell me? What is it that you want? What are the goals you haven't achieved yet? If there was a way to make your life better, what would that be? And just interact, have a discussion, and you are going to notice, it may sound schizophrenic in some way, maybe, but it's going to sound like you have much more options, and you may see things you were not seeing in the beginning. Technique number 6 is a very simple way to reframe your inner dialogue. This is just one question. In my opinion, questions, especially open-ended questions that can be answered with many more ideas and words than closed questions, like, do you feel good? Yes, no, pretty boring and not really relevant. But open-ended questions can always enlighten about what the limitation is and what the limitation needs to get away, to change, and to be just left alone. So you can ask yourself, if there was no possible way this fails, or if there was no possible limits, what would I do about it? If there was no possible limits to your potential, to how confident you can become, to the voice you can have when you want to do public speaking, whatever it is, if there was no possible limitations, what would you choose? If you were not the person you have been so far, if you were not having any of the limitations you used to have up to now, what would you be doing? What would you do? If everything was possible, if there was no possible limit, what would you be choosing? How would you be deciding what is true and what is not true about yourself and about your life? This technique is going to, once again, open new pathways and possibilities that you may have not uncovered before. And finally, technique number 7, this one is going to talk about time distortion, or something that is commonly called in NLP timeline therapy, but in another way. The idea is that your conscious mind alone has many defense mechanisms, has many defenses, and if you just try to make one change, it can very easily be resisted. When you make a double time distortion, it is very tough to resist. So if I was asking you, imagine yourself in the future when you will be much more confident, you may just give all your excuses or all your limitations for, oh, it's just not me, I'm not capable of that, I have never been like that, it's impossible. However, if I ask you, after you have imagined yourself being much more confident from the future, can you look back on today and tell me what you see? It's a double distortion. You are going to make the person or yourself in that example go into the future and ask your unconscious mind, tell me from a version in the future where I am much more confident or have achieved all the things I wanted, how do I look back on who I was today or who I was that day, the day I started this whole journey? And by doing this, you are going to create some distortion, some kind of cognitive distortion in the brain, so that it opens a pathway again, and it makes you see things you were not seeing about your present situation. Maybe you will feel like you were kind of just too hard on yourself. You will feel like you were just blaming yourself nonstop for things you are not even accountable for. And this exercise is really incredible whenever I have been using it in therapy with clients or even on myself. It always creates kind of breakthroughs about what is not being seen right now in the situation. So you can travel through time. Imagine you are somewhere 10 years in the future, or at the very least 2 or 3 years in the future, at least from a point in time where you have been achieving all the things you wanted. And from that point in time, you are going to look back on what you were experiencing at this point in time when you are watching this video right now, and you are going to check what is it that you are not seeing or sensing or listening to in this current environment you are into. This is opening new doors and new possibilities into your head. That is all for this video. If you have some more techniques that have been drastically useful for you, you can write them in the comment section, and maybe I will talk about it in the next video if you have been bringing something relevant to the conversation.